This is sort of like the chance to just relax and just sort of like think about things a little bit, stay completely non-technical. And we went through different names for what would be the best name for this topic. We wanted it to be a high level and just a reflection of where we are, where you are, what it's like to be in this world these days. So one of the this is the name we settled on in the program. The one I originally suggested was this one, but we decided that sounded a little uppity. My personal favorite, but I didn't even mention it to anyone else, would be, we may come from different worlds, but we're not so unlike you and I. And you'll see why. As we go through the final slides, I want you to keep the following in mind, two things. I'm hoping when I say some of the things about what we do internally, you're going to say, oh my goodness, we experience those exact same things. We are all developers. My problem is your problem. And then maybe even more so, thank goodness they've done this so we don't have to. How much does this describe your application? And I don't want a show of hands here, but I wrote end-user applications enough to think this is pretty close. It's a business application. I'm doubting if any of you are using DataFlex to write games or just doing it, for fun. It's to model. It's to write an application to do something for a business. And while that sounds trivial, a whole lot of software is not. It's either being done to support low-level things, or it's being done to for whatever. Your application is probably geared for a very specific business, sometimes even a single business. I mean, this might be a custom application for a single customer. You may be the company that needs the application that's writing it, or you may be providing services to a single company, or you're providing it to a small subset of the industry. I don't think anyone is going to use DataFlex to write the next email client. But you're writing for very specific businesses. It's a very high-level solution. It is a solution geared specifically to a specific business. Your real skill is knowing the business and not just knowing technology. It's always been my experience when talking to DataFlex developers. While they're great programmers and while they know the technology, that's not where their value is. Their value is whatever business they're working with. They really understand the business. Mike McIver was, when he gave his talk about the gun, and he gave very, very, like his technical explanation of it was, and we need something that people can drop on the floor and step on, and it'll still keep working. That's somebody who understands the business, as opposed to, and I think you're going to say, and we thought you could even put your phone in there and stuff like that, but from a business point of view, that didn't make sense. The other example of how much we know the business is at the end of his talk, a couple people raised their hands and said, well, have you tried the Acme 2000? Like the people who write DataFlex applications know the business that they're working in. When you write an application, it's not something that's quick, knocked off, and in 2 years you're going to be off doing something else. You're writing an application that's supposed to last. Whatever it is, it's going to last. And usually, since every application in the world takes longer to write than you originally planned, by the time you're done, you want it to, go a long time. Let's talk about the word legacy. My children hope I will have a legacy, because someday this will all be theirs, not this. But somehow in software, legacy has become the bad term. In IT, legacy has been, that's legacy. It used to be that legacy was a good thing, and that what I'm going to argue is the definition of success is legacy. If you have a successful application, after it's been successful, unless you abandon it and you go off somewhere else, you have a legacy application. And if successful, your application starts becoming becomes evolutionary and not so much revolutionary. You just want to keep making it better, better, and better. That's kind of what we think of when we say what's the target for a for a DataFlex developer is this kind of need, this kind of application, this kind of developer. So, what's the DataFlex way? What's the DataFlex point of view? Well, we are a business software language. That's primarily what we are, and its genesis was based on this goes way back to when Corey Casanave was here yesterday, and this was there were plenty of things that I mean he did brilliantly, but like I thought one of the most interesting was that he created a language that had these like words in it that had these things that would only make sense in a business environment, would only make sense to people like us and your customers. Auto-find, required, range. This is not the normal kind of stuff that you hear talked about, like in computer sciencey kind of things. It was very high level. It's like, what does auto-find mean? Well, it means when you find a record and you hit it, it finds it automatically. Find next, find previous. It's a high level thing, and although those days are gone where we're doing that in the old entry forms, those words remain in some cases, and if anything, the same thing, we are still a business language, that we have these things called data dictionary objects that define business rules. You don't hear as much about that anymore, and we have these things called data entry objects, and the data entry objects exist in Windows and it exists on the web, and it's the magic that occurs between a data dictionary and a data entry object that knows how to bring records in and out, it knows how to do validations, but it's doing this from a business point of view, that you could almost even explain what the rules are to the people from the business you're in, as opposed to explaining it in terms of like sort of like techie talk. It's a high-level business language. And it works best in the hands of somebody who knows the rules of a business and not just IT. That's, I don't know much more needs to be said about that. It tries to keep things as simple as possible. And notice the as possible. One thing that we will often hear people say is, it just seems to be getting so complicated. Look around and see what else is out there. That software has gotten incredibly complicated, and this is a great conversation to have at some point, is, has software gotten too complicated? And you'll have some people say no, because what you have to build has gotten so complicated that it's justified, and then you'll have other people saying, yeah, it seems like maybe it's like the inmates are running the asylum. It remains our goal to make things as high level and simple as possible. And so we're talking about all these crazy technologies, but things that we do, but when you look at them in a small sense, our goal is simplicity, which means we need to figure out what you as a business developer wants to do and give it to you and not give you 25 options. The DataFlex way, we value and really respect continuity. We understand you're not all up to 19.0. And we also understand that we cannot make a change in the product that's going to break your application, or we don't do it intentionally. And if you ever hear us saying something you can slap our hands with, if they go, well, this doesn't work right, and we go, well, oh yeah, well, we don't do that anymore. You need to change your code. We really spend a lot of time respecting the fact that you have applications that need to keep running so that we don't change things on you. And as importantly, when the industry changes things underneath us and you, we try to, part of our goal is to respond and say, okay, we'll take care of that so you don't have to worry about it. And so another way to put it is the things that keep you up at night also keep us up at night. And that's exactly what this last slide said, is we try to, it's our responsibility to take care of the latest industry changes, good and bad, and integrate them in the department. We do it so you don't have to do it. Okay, as the CTO of Data Access, I have some of the following roles. I have to lead the group in deciding what to do, make recommendations, and this is always a group process where we're fairly democratic company. I assist in the design of the product. I code. I would say for the most part, I'm best at the Flex level, but I code in other areas as well. And one of my semi-unique roles is I act as a developer advocate, and we will sit in meetings, and these days these mostly seem to be remote phone meetings, and someone will say, well, here's the interface for this, and here's how we're going to do that, and I go, well, okay, I'm not sure. Explain this to me again. So exactly how would I do the following? So it's like, it's like, okay, so here's the interface. How would I do that? And I do it because it makes them think I understand what they're saying. and so, rather than saying, I don't know what this means, give me an example. No, but actually, seriously, it is an important thing that we go, okay, great, so we're talking about this thing, we're going to add this thing. How are our end users going to use it? My other job is to say, be careful. We're getting into areas, and I really have to be fair and say I share that job with Stephen. That his comment is, what, here there be dragons. With any product, you have to know when to be careful, and then you have to know when to say no. It's like, this is a great idea, this is a great thing, but we're not going to do that. But let's talk about deciding what to do next. How do we decide what changes to make? And as I said, as we're going through this, keep this in your head. Oh yeah, we do the same thing. We have a long list. We have a long list of things we want to do. We have to respond to changes in the industry. Some cases we have to respond right away. Other cases we have to respond in time for when you need these changes, which often is not immediately. Here's a great new technology. You're not going to need it in your application for 2 years, maybe. It just depends. We listen to our developers, believe it or not. We actually forum, when you come to these things, you'd be surprised at how much, when you leave a message on a forum, how much we talk about it. And what we don't do is we don't talk about it on the forum because that's really not productive and it's not the best way for us to make a decision. Lars here presented a problem with 19.0 where his tables were getting defined in a different way, and he explained it, and we sort of responded to it. And we talked with him about it here, but what he didn't see was that a group of people in the company spent a long time discussing it. And ranging from, well, we should just tell them, don't do it that way, to, no, we're going to have people who are going to, this is happening to, or, well, if you did it this way, it would have worked. Should we do it? Should we change the product? But if we change the product, then the people, yes, it'll help him, but it's going to send everyone off the wrong way. We really do listen, and when we decide to make changes, as I said, and then we actually even have some of our own ideas. But while we're doing that, we also recognize that we have limitation resources, that we have to pick the right things. And we also have to recognize that adding a feature goes way beyond just the technical implementation. One of the most dangerous things in a software company is someone comes in and says, look, I just wrote this thing, and it's 90% done. Just put it in. It's ready to go. And yeah, right. Yeah, and we'll get to actually developers. I mean, will make the same offerings to us, which is, look, I've written this thing. It's yours. Put it in the product. Well, there's a lot more than that, and we have to recognize that. First of all, what's one of the lot more is that 90%. Once you say, now let's really get it right, suddenly becomes a lot bigger, and then it's like, oh yeah, we need to document this. Who wants to document it? Documentation is the bell on the cat. Who wants to put the bell on the cat? And very few people want to do it. And then it's like, once we add this great feature, then we want to support it for a long time. We don't just add something cool, great, and then a year later say, well, it didn't work out so much. Why don't you try something else? So even adding the simplest thing has a surprisingly high cost, which we have to consider. We respect, as I said, continuity and legacy. We don't want to add things that will break applications. And then we mix it all together to produce product. And that's the magical art. That's the, you take all these things and you just make the best decision you can. Then, how do we decide where to make the changes? When I say where to make the changes, what part of the product? And in a second, I'll show you all the different parts of the product we have. What part of the code should we be doing this in? Should we be doing this in C? Should we be doing it in the runtime? Should we be doing it in an extension? Should we do it in DataFlex? And we're talking about us now, our product that we provide to you. We work in the product area. Here's some of the ways we could do it that gives the best technical result. Yeah, this is the right place to do it. And sometimes that can even be, this is like from a like an engineering point of view, this is the place, this is the beautiful solution. That's one way to do it. That gives the most maintainable result. To do it this way, we're going to be putting a product that we have the resources to maintain it. We know we can understand it, fix it, whatever. That is most cost effective. Sometimes we even try to consider that. It's like, yeah, we could do that, but this would be really expensive. Or we could do it this way, and it'll be significantly less expensive, but get us most of the way there. You have to balance these things. And we're not talking about now about putting it in the product. We're saying where to put it in the product. So should we put it in Flex code or C code? Well, we could put it in Flex code, and it'll pretty much do everything we need it to do. Or we could put it in C++, and it'll take a year. There's also always a bias for whoever is going to get assigned something. You want to work with something you're familiar with. So if you mostly work with C, you're going to say, I want to do this in C. If you mostly work in JavaScript, you're going to say, I want to do this in JavaScript. If you mostly work in DataFlex, you say, I want to do this in DataFlex. We have to make that decision of where is the best place to do it. And then the killer, the hardest one to deal with. Where do you want to do that's going to be the most fun? And while it may sound like I'm being facetious here, I'm not. That there is always the problem that developers want to work in the areas that is their expertise, but also like, oh, there's this new thing out. There's this like new something or this new style. I want to try using it. And we've got stuff like that scattered all over the product, especially in the runtime and especially in the C++. And while it's good because it motivates development, it motivates the developers, it doesn't always work best to fit those other things. So when we decide where we're going to work in the product, we make that decision. There's never a single answer. Okay, I'm going to speak personally now. Over the last few years, for various different reasons, I've been working in code areas that I've not worked in before. Part of it was like change in personnel, and part of it is I just wanted to do it. I wanted to work in other areas, and it's been an instructive experience. It's you try to step back and say what it is, and part of it is there's another experience you could have, which is and it's best to do it with a product that you don't personally deal with. In my case, like audio recording software. And you try a new product, and you realize that when you're trying to learn how to use something, the experience that you're going to have, which is you start off with, and boy, none of this makes any sense. I can't make any of this work. And then you have to slow down. You have to read the documentation a little bit. You have to get used to it. And then you discover, oh, OK, this seemed like a weird way to do it, but now I get it. This is very productive. And sometimes on the other side, you'll find out that, yeah, the stuff that I thought was really, really easy and automatic and great, once I know this a little bit, it's getting in the way. So this is workflow, and just this is where this could have been the philosophy part of it. Is workflow is an important part of development. Anyway, what do we develop in? Well, here's just a quick sort of non-proprietary answer. Our main runtime is in C. We have lots of extension DLLs that are written in C and C++. The extensions can be in COM, they can be MFC. Those tend to be in C++. And those extensions are often accessed either directly by our runtime. The runtime talks to these extensions, or we access them at the Flex level. And also, by the way, accessing at the Flex level is a pretty powerful thing that you can do as well. This is an aside. Eddie talked about how he had Ulby create a DLL that was used for something. it's if you've got like a good C programmer, you've got a good C# programmer that knows how to do this stuff, creating DLLs and connecting to COM or just connecting with a straight DLL interface is pretty straightforward. And you can like marry these things all together. Anyway, our add-on technologies also include things that we've purchased or are using from other places. CodeJock, MFC COM, there's this like incredible C++ library called Boost. Xerces is an XML parser that we use on the web app side. On the Windows side, we use the MS XML parser. Anyway, we have these. Mostly we have source for these. There's a few things that we have that that are even no longer supported. And it's one of these things that we're the buffer, that's our problem, it's not your problem. That's why we generally like to have source for things. But even that's never the perfect answer, because having source when it's lots and lots and lots and lots of code that you don't understand, your hope is you never have to look at it. Then we have a lot of Flex development code as well. We write a lot in DataFlex, mostly the high level, UI, moving back and forth, visual, procedural, rules, the things that DataFlex is really good at. And then, of course, we work with our own packages. We work with our own package library. So, for example, the studio, just as an example, is primarily written in DataFlex. But it also uses COM objects that use Boost, and it uses CodeJock. It uses CodeJock COM controls. It uses a CodeJock MFC control. It has this whole, as I said, it has some extension things. The extensions are things that we wrote. We wrote a COM control that manages the whole code sense thing written in C++ using Boost, but we're accessing that just at the DataFlex level. And then we wrote lots and lots of that code in DataFlex. If we had chosen to write the entire studio in C++, we would be talking about, and this came out, I don't know, it was DataFlex 12, but we'd still be talking about releasing it. Again, you got to pick the right tool for the right thing. We work a lot in JavaScript, and Henry's talk should have shown you that combination of DataFlex, combination of JavaScript, and then we also deal with XML, HTML, JSON, all the X stuff. So this is our development platforms. And just observations that I've made. When working in C, I mean, obviously a great, powerful language, actually fun to work in. You sure have to be careful. Pointers and memory leaks are just part of working in C. It's just like the underworld design was low enough, and this can be expensive development. When you need it, it's great. I mean, it's one, and the tools that are available, Visual Studio, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's low-level development. What about C++? It's powerful, but it solves some of the C problems. Like you don't quite have as many pointer and memory leak problems. It catches them, but it's really complex. And especially there's this thing called STL, where you use like templates to do things. And the one thing I'm just always struck with C++ is how many files you generate to do anything. Like the Boost library or the CodeJock MFC library, there are like many, 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 many thousands of lines of code. Not lines of code, forget lines of code, millions probably, files. When you undo a zip file, there's like 10,000 files. When John got up here and said, the studio, it's like, this is one of our big applications, it's really extensive, we've got over 500 files. In C++, they would say, oh, that's a baby step, that we need that much to do a hello world. And when you make a change, a small change, it's amazing how many files you touch. Harm's been doing some of that, and it's like, I just added this one little thing, and it's like I checked in 12 files. It's just the way it is. It can be an expensive development environment as well. The extension libraries, if you're working in C or C++, they're a requirement. They're the only way you're going to get anywhere. Again, so much code. And it's one of these things you can't live with them, you can't live without them, because you don't really control it, you don't really understand it. But it's what you have to use. Back to DataFlex. It's definitely a higher level. It's just like for the right thing, it's the right level. It is great for business processing and anything that's sort of like intensive user interface work. But it's not the right tool for every application need. An application really needs to spread out and do a lot of things. But when applied to the right task and then working with all the other pieces, it's a really effective solution. A few more observations. You need a good development studio and debugger. And I think the DataFlex studio and debugger is a really good studio. And it's good enough that when you switch back and forth between that and Visual Studio, you can work comfortably in both places. It's good. It's a good tool. Development is basically the same everywhere. You design first, sometimes, code carefully, and debug extensively. There's no magic way around that. It's just what's going to be done. You should put comments in codes, but we are all sinners, and it's just not going to happen. It doesn't matter whether you force it in headers. It doesn't matter where you put it in. So you better hope that the code that you've got is readable, just like the source code itself, forget the comments. Documentation, no one is great. Many are horrible. And while there's plenty that could be improved in the DataFlex documentation, it's not all that bad. We at least make an attempt, and when we write new documentation, we try to explain it why you'd be interested in this. And then the other thing, and this is like, how did we ever survive before Google? When you're trying to figure out how Windows works, when you're trying to figure out how JSON works, when you're trying to figure out how JavaScript works, what the interface is and all like that, Google, Wikipedia, you type in the words, you find it, that's the new way we work. It's not that hard to change gears. It's not that hard to say, now I'm working in DataFlex, now I'm working in C++, now I'm working in JavaScript. And having smart developers who can work across gears is really, really invaluable. That when, I'll pick on Henry again, that when he was showing these JavaScript classes, it's clear he knew JavaScript and he knew DataFlex. And the fact that he worked in both areas meant that in order to create a solution, he didn't have to say, now I'm going to hand this to this person, and that person say, well, I don't want to do your part, and this person says, I don't want to do your part. It was this great, you get the results by I think any modern developer needs to expect they're going to be working across, sort of across technologies. It's just the way it is. And I'll pick Harm as another example, which is Harm's been doing a number of C changes and C++ changes. He brought the JSON parser in. And what really, really helps was that, and now, not to mention, all the web app stuff, is that he understands, when he brings it in and he creates the interface for the JSON parser, he understands DataFlex enough so that it's a really nice interface and can implement it himself. It's really important. And I'll just leave us with a couple conclusions here. You have to just find the right tool for the right task. We think the DataFlex is the right tool for high-level business UI needs, that kind of programmer, that kind of need I was talking about at the beginning. And as needed, bring in the other levels that you need. We don't say you can do it all in DataFlex, but it is an important part, and for everyone here, it's probably the central part of your application. And again, there's a real advantage in knowing how to work in multiple areas. And just to end this with a few quotes, I was talking with Peter Bragg, and said, so, I understand you've got the next version of your application come out. How's it going? Okay, but we're behind schedule because the industry we're working in keeps changing their rules and regulations. It's driving us crazy. And from our point of view, that's music to our ears. Because what we didn't get was, yeah, we're way behind schedule. We're having a really hard time making your stuff work. This is the kind of problems we want business developers to have. It's problems with their business, not problems with the technology. Now, Peter also said, it's kind of good because we're actually behind schedule technically too, but we're telling our customers it's technology. In Carson's talk at some point, he said, that's the way the whole world goes, so do we. Right? I mean, that part of our job as developers, when we improve our applications, is you go, I don't know why we're changing all of our images to be flat and colorless, but if that's what the industry wants, that's what we do. It's called responsive programming. Revolutions usually don't work. And so if like once you've got something that's working, what you really might be wanting is evolution and not revolution. You only go for revolution when things are really, really bad, and keep in mind that they usually don't work. They do sometimes, but they usually don't. There is an advantage of legacy and evolution. Then finally, I'll just let you read that one. We're very proud of our product, but what we really like is, our product is the song, you are the singers, and we really appreciate and respect how you can take our song and really make it sing. And for that, we thank you. And thank you for coming to the conference.